Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken and I'm joined by Aaron Stokes of the Chronicle to discuss the big match this weekend, Birmingham City against Newcastle United in the FA Cup fourth round. Aaron, thanks for coming on. I'm sure you're going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes telling us why Blues are going to beat Newcastle and advance to the fifth round, correct?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you know me too well.
So just want to touch on Newcastle really to start with. I mean, I watched the game against Arsenal in midweek, the second leg, 2-0 win, 4-0 aggregate, through to the Carabao Cup final for the second time in 3 years. Very impressive performance. Talk us through the story of Newcastle's season so far, because it seems to have really lit up in the last 2 months.
Yeah, if I'm totally honest, it's been a bit of an unusual season. It's been up and down. I mean, the league table looks great. They're in another cup final, but then there's just been times, and if I'm honest, this statement will probably give Birmingham a little bit of hope, is that the games that you expect Newcastle United to win on paper, they haven't. We all saw what they did against Arsenal over 2 legs, and they were brilliant, and they were pretty much faultless. But then at home this season, they've lost to Bournemouth, to Fulham, to Brighton, to West Ham. Teams who are obviously really, really good sides on paper, but Newcastle should probably have taken at least something from those games at St James's Park. But as you say, Wednesday night was good. It gave everyone a huge lift. They're back in the cup final again. Hopefully they can go one step further this time. I think my only worry is that will there be a little bit of a hangover? And what I mean by that is, there was so much emotion flowing on that stadium on Wednesday night. The players had to give it their all, and I think Eddie Howe will really want them to be focused on this weekend. But how focused they will be, I'm not too sure.
Let's hope there's a hangover. Newcastle got big Premier League games coming up, haven't they, as well, after that Blues game against 3 of the teams around them in the table. So yeah, is there potential for Eddie Howe to rotate, do you think? And if so, who comes in?
Yeah, well, we spoke to Eddie Howe this morning, and he gave a very typical Eddie Howe answer in that, even though they're in a Carabao Cup final and they're going well in the league, they're still going to give the FA Cup a real good go. And I think we wouldn't expect anything less from an Eddie Howe setup. I think there still will be rotation. I think the squad is looking pretty thin at the minute. In January we sold Miguel Almiron, we sold Lloyd Kelly, who weren't first team players, they weren't starting players, but they've just taken away that little added layer of depth. And not signing anybody, it is starting to look a little bit thin on the ground. I think in terms of changes, we can probably see someone like Nick Pope coming back in from the cold. Having him as a standing keeper at the minute is not too shabby. I think there'll be changes in the back four. I think Sven Botman is injured. He'll drop out. We could probably see the likes of Emil Kraft and Matt Targett come in. Joe Willock, Sean Longstaff, Lewis Miley are all fighting for places at the minute. They will probably play in the middle. And then I think up front, Callum Wilson's back. He will be wanting to play. But then after that, I mean, the options are looking pretty thin up top. So I think we'll see a little bit of a mixture of those players we saw against Arsenal, with some fresh faces thrown in. But the likes of Sean Longstaff and Joe Willock and Lewis Miley coming off the bench, are pretty solid assets to have. They're pretty strong players. They're experienced, top flight, assets to have. So I think Eddie Howe will be confident that as long as those players are in the right mindset, they'll hopefully get the job done.
Yeah. So you through to the final of the Carabao Cup, you're riding high in the league and looking to finish in the top 4. How seriously can Eddie Howe, as much as he might say he's going to take it seriously, how seriously can he take the FA Cup? Because at the moment it looks like the third competition of importance for Newcastle, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And I think even Eddie Howe would probably admit, not to us, but certainly behind the scenes and off the record, that it probably is the least of his concerns at the minute. That would have obviously changed had Arsenal come back on Wednesday and book their place in the final. But the one thing with Eddie Howe is he came into the club in 2021 and his initial aim was to keep them in the league. And ever since then, he has never wavered on wanting to be the man to win a cup with Newcastle. And I think now that we know it's going to be Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final and Newcastle are going to be huge underdogs, he will want that security, that safety blanket, that safety net, whatever you want to call it, of having another cup competition to have a good go at. Saying that again, will he maybe secretly be a little bit happy if they crash out on Saturday? I don't know. Look, he has never once, as I say, he's never once changed his opinion on the cups, whether it's Carabao or FA Cup. And I think he will have driven that and instilled that in his players, that they are not to think of this as a third competition. They are to give it their all. And I think, as I say, it's just whether they can go again after Wednesday. And as you say, with some really big league games coming up, Manchester City away next week, Liverpool, Forest in the weeks to come. Will it take a back seat? I don't know.
I wanted to ask you, I know it could be a different team, but I wanted to ask you who the players the Blues should be most wary of are. Obviously, kind of Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon probably speak for themselves. Same with Bruno. Who are the players that Blues need to watch out for?
I think maybe if we're just going off some of those players I mentioned who could come in from the cold, I think players that Birmingham fans might not know about too much of is probably Emil Kraft at the back, who was signing as Steve Bruce as a sort of a second choice right back and has just turned into this incredibly dependable centre back under Eddie Howe. He will likely come back in after a little injury, and he is generally up there at the minute with the best centre backs at the club. He's had such a transformation in midfield. I think Lewis Miley will come in. He played very, very well against Bromley in the last round. Admittedly, they are obviously a National League team or a League Two side, but he is so good at midfield. He will try and dictate the play. He'll try control possession. He will try and really make that midfield tick. So he's definitely one to watch. He's only an 18-year-old lad. He's had his own injury issues this season, but he is, he is potentially going to be a superstar in the next couple of years. And I think we also see Willis Sula as well, who came in the summer from Sheffield United, signed for 10 million, despite the fact he was relatively unknown. He's struggled this season to get game time, but he played in the last round. He's played in some of the early Carabao Cup rounds. And this on paper looks like a really good task for him to get some minutes under his belt. He looks like he, again, could be one for the future. Very, very quick, very positive with the ball, quick, very, very good at playing off the shoulder of the defenders. So I think in terms of the defence, midfield and the attack, those are maybe the three that could come in and also maybe go under the radar slightly.
Listening to Chris Davis speak about Eddie Howe in the week, said he's the best English manager around. I guess there's not anyone in the Northeast who'll disagree with him on that one.
Yeah, I think he's got that spot on, to be fair. I was actually doing a podcast yesterday and somebody asked me a similar question about Eddie Howe. And I think, for me, it's a case of when, not if, he becomes England manager. I think he's an absolute shoo-in for the job. Not just because of what he's done with Newcastle on the pitch, but his outlook on the game and his determination and his drive and his attitude is just screams FA to me. I think it will be... he will get the job further down the line. For me, I hope that's after a Carabao Cup, maybe an FA Cup, maybe a Premier League. I hope it's not any time in the future, but he's definitely up there with the best, if not the best, English coach at the minute. And I think Newcastle United are so lucky to have him. And I can't believe we're actually sat in 2025 and talking about this, because when he came in 2021, there was just sort of this sense that he was going to come in, potentially keep them up, and then, the takeover happening and the Saudi owners are going to say, right, well, we want someone like Mourinho or Conte or Poch or someone, a big name who could take them to the next level. And actually what they've had is Eddie Howe has grown with the team. He's a much better manager than he was at Bournemouth, and he's just perfect for the club. He gets the club so well. And that goes again back to what I say about him wanting to be the first man to win a cup in, close to 70 years.
I think everyone from a Blues persuasion accepts they are, underdogs going into this tie this weekend. But I suppose, not many people in Newcastle will be aware that Blues have spent so much money. I think the Jay Stansfield one did catch everyone, out a little bit. And, they've obviously signed Christoph Clara, Willem Willemsen, Tamerki Awata. They've got some very good players in the squad. Are anyone in Newcastle actually do you think they're aware of this? Do you think they kind of just expect him to come to Blues and walk over a League One team? Or do you think they know a little bit more about the story and how much Blues have spent?
I mean, just from my own personal point of view, I was pretty gripped on the Birmingham story in the summer, and purely because of the amount of money they were spending, the ownership, it was very, very intriguing. So I think Newcastle will be aware. A League One side knocked them out the FA Cup in the third round back in 2022. So we've been here before. It's not impossible that Newcastle United do lose these games. And I think anybody looking at that League One table and looking at Birmingham's form of late, the results that they're doing, the fact that they're 4 points clear in League One, I think they'll know that they're in for a game. And certainly within the Newcastle United dressing room, they will be treating this as a game, they really, really could lose, because Birmingham are a very decent side. Really a championship side rather than a League One side, given the quality of players they got. So I think the people of Newcastle are confident that Newcastle will win, but I think they'll be supremely less shocked than they would have been if Bromley had knocked them out in the last round.
Yeah, Eddie Howe strikes me as a little bit like Chris Davies, in that he's probably the ultimate professional and won't really accept any kind of complacency in matches like these.
100%. That is it. Whether they're playing Bromley at St James's Park in the last round or Arsenal away, the mantra is the same. He wants to win every single game. So he will have drilled that into them this week, that they can't take the foot off the gas.
Despite all that, will anyone from Newcastle be giving Blues a prayer, or are they expecting that walkover?
I don't think they're expecting a walkover, but I think they will expect Newcastle United to go through. I hope and I expect that they probably will, but I think it will be a close game. Just going off what I said at the very start, I think, even though Birmingham probably won't do this, I think if Birmingham were to just sit off and try and really frustrate and restrict Newcastle, it would probably be better for them than going toe-to-toe, because, as I say, Fulham, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, all those games where Newcastle have lost this season, Bournemouth side really, they've had the lion's share possession, they've had more chances on goal, but they've just been really, really frustrated. So it depends maybe how Birmingham set up. I mean, you've obviously told me that they'll probably go for it, which might play in Newcastle's hands. I think they'll get through, but I think it will be a really, really good game.
It's interesting how they will set up, to be honest. I think they will try and dominate the ball and try and kind of play as close as they normally would as possible. But also, I know Chris Davies is so meticulous in his preparation. He'll watch Newcastle, 10 plus times before this game, and will have come up with a plan that can kind of negate his team's weaknesses and, obviously try and control Newcastle's strengths. So it will be interesting to see if they do try and match up and dominate the ball. That doesn't tend to go well for the lower ranked team. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very interesting game, and one I know obviously is going to be a sellout, and everyone in Birmingham is really looking forward to. So before I let you go, Aaron, throw us a score prediction as you made me do one earlier.
I'll go with a 2-1 win for Newcastle. I think they'll leave it late and they'll snatch a winner later on. But as I say, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it will be a really, really entertaining game.
Agreed. Thank you, Aaron, for your time, and thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully he's wrong. Hopefully Blues can spring a surprise in this weekend's big FA Cup tie. A big keep right on for the weekend.